It seems insane to say, but the biggest news I'm going to bring you here on day 2 has to do with a player that pretty much wasn't even on radars in the last couple of seasons. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, everybody. I'm Dan Vespers, and today we're going to be looking through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think we're going to 9 pieces of news that have occurred since free agency started. We're not doing it in chronological order on today's show. I thought I would just get sort of like the biggest things out of the way on yesterday's show. But as more dominoes are falling, the thing that looks like the biggest thing is seemingly changing on the fly. And so I bring you this piece of news to start today's show. Free agent center. I'm not kidding. This is actually important. Free agent center Luca Garza has agreed to a 2-year, $5.5 million fully guaranteed deal. I'm having trouble talking today. With the Boston Celtics. And you wouldn't have thought in 1,000 years that this would be a thing we'd need to think about for next fantasy season. But with the Celtics shedding salary, they've already traded Drew Holiday. They already traded Kristaps Porzingis, who was an expiring deal this year anyway, and Jason Tatum out for the year. They seem less and less likely. And even a week ago, it was like, oh, the Celtics are prioritizing bringing back their big men from this last year. That hasn't happened. In fact, the opposite has happened so far, in that Luke Kornet has already signed with the San Antonio Spurs. We're hearing that the Lakers are actually linked to Big Al Horford, which, I mean, be still my beating heart here if you put Big Al on my hometown team. Not for fantasy, just for general reality stuff. But all of a sudden, you're looking at a Celtics roster that has Neemias Queta as one of the centers and Luca Garza as the other one. Because Porzingis is gone. Kornet is gone. Horford is a free agent and might be gone. And that leaves one man. I need like the movie. I need the movie guy voice. One man will rescue the Celtics front court. One man. Do you guys remember Jerry Seinfeld's Comedian, the movie? There was a promo for it where they sort of made fun of the movie guy voice, and he was like, one man, one desire. And Seinfeld was like, no, this isn't it. And he goes, a renegade robot cop. Anyway, one man is currently left standing right now, seemingly in the Celtics front court, and that man is apparently Luca Garza. The problem, of course, is Queta's there, and they may end up splitting center minutes, and the Celtics could still bring in someone else over the next little bit, because as much as this is most likely a lost season for Boston, they probably don't want to treat it that way. By the way, as we're settling in here, please remember to hit like and subscribe, because we're still, I don't really know how this is happening, but we're still somehow growing everything, even in the dead of the off season, and that's because of you guys. So welcome. Hopefully you guys are new. If you're finding us for the first time, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We've got all sorts of amazing stuff that's only going to be ramping up to possibly as many as 4 different notable content creators here on Old Man Squad's YouTube channel. And then, of course, on the traditional feed, you'll mostly get me. But if we're going to try as best we can to kind of extrapolate what would Luca Garza be if he was given any kind of meaningful minutes, you've got to really hunt and peck, like someone just learning how to type on the keyboard, and look for basically like the 3-4 games in his entire NBA career where he's played starters level minutes. And in those games, he showed a pretty damn versatile fantasy game. We're going back. Garza, believe it or not, has been in the NBA for like 3 seasons already. Or is it 4 now? His first year was with the Pistons, as you might recall. I truthfully didn't. But there were back-to-back games at the basically the turn of the calendar year from 2021 to 2022, where he played 39 minutes twice in a row. One of them was against the Knicks. He shot 1 out of 10 from the field, absolute dumpster fire of a shooting game. But, and I say this with a grain of salt, he managed to salvage his fantasy line with 9 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, a block, and a 3-pointer. The following game, which was I think 2 or 3 days later, it was an overtime game, and he played 40 minutes in that one. That was against the Spurs. And he went for 20 and 14 with a steal, a 3-pointer, but just 5 of 8 at the free throw line. So there was something slightly problematic there. The very last game of that same year, the Pistons were in full tank mode at this point. He had 20 and 10 with 4 assists, a block, 2 3-pointers, and a miserable 2 out of 6 at the free throw line. He shot 62% at the charity stripe during his first season in the NBA. That's a number that's been slowly ticking in the upward direction. But again, we're working with such a sample size dearth, a lack, that it's hard to say what's really real for Garza. So far, he's at 49% shooting from the field in his NBA career. He's averaging about half a 3-pointer a game during his NBA career. He's at 70% at the free throw line. But this is, of course, while playing a whopping 8 minutes per game on average over that stretch. So we really just don't know exactly what he's going to be. But we do know that he's a little bit of a stretch 5. And stretch 5s can rack up fantasy stats if the situation is right. I mean, we can do as much digging as humanly possible on this. You're just not going to find all that much on, like, what's a good Luca Garza game. In his first game his first season in Minnesota, twice the entire year, he eclipsed 20 minutes played in a basketball game. And by the way, he was really good in those games. He went for 19 and 9 in one of them. Didn't hit a 3-pointer. In the next one, he went for 25, only 3 rebounds, kind of a weird thing. 3 assists. He had 4 3-pointers in that ball game. Not a big shot blocking guy, not a big steals guy, but again, we also haven't really seen a sample size for him. I would say if he got good minutes, you're probably looking at like maybe 0.4, 0.5 steals, maybe like 0.5, 0.6 blocks. So that's not going to be a thing that elevates him either. Guys, BetOnline is your number one sports betting source and continues to be as we roll through the baseball season. UFC, tennis, NFL futures, all of that available at BetOnline right now. We've talked about soccer. And in addition to the latest odds, news, scores, and sports wagering info, they've got live in-game betting. You can get down on the madness as the madness is actually happening on the TV in front of you. And in between games, head to the BetOnline casino with all your top Vegas style games, including poker, a live casino. I love a live casino. I'm going to be at Summer League for a couple of days next week. You'll probably actually see me skipping Summer League and going to a live casino instead. But check out the BetOnline casino if you're waiting out a ball game that maybe you can do it at the same time. Also, take advantage of the industry-leading VIP program by heading to BetOnline today. You've got level-up bonuses, weekly cash boosts as all part of that VIP program, just a way to maximize your fun, maximize your opportunities to win. BetOnline, the game starts here. So what am I telling you right now? Am I telling you to race out and pick up Luca Garza, or am I telling you to race out and draft Luca Garza? No, but he is very much firmly on the radar right now as a 26-year-old center who really hasn't gotten a shot yet. And it looks like right now, at least, the Celtics are going to give him some kind of look. Also, in the center department of our discussion, the Hornets brought back a prior Hornets center, and Mason Plumley signed a $3.6 million one-year deal with Charlotte. The way Shams tweeted it out, and you can see it on your screen right now, they call it front court depth, but honestly, they didn't really have a center that they could trust for the most part. Moussa Diabate was the only one who'd played more than like a handful of minutes. There's some rookies coming in that might have a little bit of size. What do we do with this information? I'm definitely not drafting Mason Plumley. There's almost no chance that he's going to play more than 23, 24, 25 minutes, and that's not enough for him if you're playing straight 9 cat. We've certainly had some seasons in the past where Plumlee's been good enough with proper punts. Like if you look a few years ago, he averaged 11 and 9 on 68% shooting, but he was miserable at the free throw line, and he has been throughout his career. So you probably don't want to draft Plumlee if you're trying to win free throws at all. And I don't know that you draft Plumlee even if you're punting free throws, because he's just not going to be a focal point. But we did ask the question of like, hey, are we going to be extraordinarily high on someone like Moussa Diabate? And the answer now is probably not. He's going to be splitting time. They're going to get even younger guys in that they perhaps believe in even more. I don't really know what the Hornets are going to be doing this year because they look like they're probably going to have to tank again, but who knows? Maybe they'll actually try to play a little bit this season. Maybe the main guys will survive the year. But either way, I don't see Plumlee playing enough this year to get inside the top 150 in 9-cat, and there's almost no way he gets inside the top 100 if even in a punt build. But, you know, maybe I shouldn't say almost no way. I should say that it's somewhat unlikely. We're going to move a little bit faster today because, again, I wanted to get to 8 players instead of yesterday. We just did 5. And the next one on our list is another center, but this one is one where the delta doesn't change all that much, and that's that Toronto Raptors signed Jakob Poeltl to an opt-in and extend deal. That's now a $104 million 4-year deal. He opted into his player option for this for the season after this current one, and then added another 3 years beyond that. So Poeltl's going to be in Toronto for half a decade on this deal because it's this year, then an opt-in, and then 3 more. So it's 5 seasons that he's locked in, which kind of means 2 things. So don't worry too much about like all the different options and whatever. Think about it from this standpoint. If you have a guy locked in for 5 years, he can be part of a rebuild, or he can be part of going for it all kind of at the same time. So if when you saw this news, your gut reaction was to say, oh, this means that the Raptors are going to be putting forth a better shoe this year, I wouldn't get too far ahead of myself. I do think that, by the way, just for whatever that's worth, they've got Brandon Ingram in there. They have a starting lineup that should be able to compete with most teams in a very flimsy Eastern Conference. So there's not there really isn't a great reason to go into a deeper rebuild when you figure, Scotty Barnes, his timeline, quickly they just brought in. Now they've signed Poeltl to this basically 5 years there. Brandon Ingram just got himself a new deal. They kind of have to compete, but don't be surprised if there's a little bit of weirdness to it, because in a 5-year deal, they could just be like, look, Jakob, we signed you forever. Like, if we got to stink for another year, can you deal with it? And you'll be like, yeah, you guys just gave me $104 million. I think I can deal with whatever you need me to deal with, provided we're not going to be bad for all 5 years. So just be a little bit careful. I think the Raptors are more safe this season. They're a little safer than they were last year. But I don't think I would look at this news and say, oh, Toronto is an easy call. They're definitely going to be safe. We have nothing to worry about. Let's just keep on the center's tack. And next, we're going to look at Brook Lopez, who is maybe the saddest news for me on the free agent market, because you guys know how long I've been hard on the Brook Lopez train, which is like, you've got this unicorn-style fantasy stat. He doesn't rebound as well as the other guys that are labeled unicorns, I guess, but he's a three-point shooting, shot-blocking big man who helps you in percentages, and no one ever wanted anything to do with him because he's a lumbering ox. He just doesn't look as fun as the other unicorn guys. He's gigantic and slow and old, but he's put up fantastic fantasy stats for years now. Years. And this season, I'm blown away that this was the best situation that Brook Lopez could find himself in. It feels like this is Brook saying, like, first of all, I don't know what Milwaukee's situation was, if they wanted to bring him back, if the Bucks were so laser focused on Miles Turner that Brook was like, I got to go elsewhere. So is this him like, I got this deal, I got this 2-year deal left, and then I'm into the veterans minimum for a couple seasons after that, and I got to go find a great spot to be on a title contender? Or is this I think I'm actually going to have a little bit of opportunity? Because it doesn't seem like it could possibly be the latter of those two options. Because he now goes to a Clippers team where Ivica Zubac firmly established himself as the preeminent big man, and he's going to come in now and he's going to push Zoo. So this hurts Zubac because now you've got a floor spacing gigantic big that you can bring off the bench if you want to. Yeah, Brook will have some nice games if Zoo ever has to miss a ball game, which barely happened last year. Zubac was super durable and generally has been pretty damn durable. But this is really, I was blown away to see this one because I saw Los Angeles. I was like, great, he's going to go to the Lakers. He's going to play plenty. He's not a rim running big man to pair with Doncic, but he's gigantic. He's a rim protector. He's a pick and pop big man, and he's a massive screen setter. And then I saw the word Clippers, and I went, wait, what? Like, what are you going to do out there, Brook? He's looking at probably 20 minutes a ball game max this year because you definitely can't play him alongside Zubac, and that's not a guy the Clippers are going to bench. Ivica really established himself as a good ball player. He'd been good for a while. He was sort of like slightly above average for a while, and then he got good, and then they were like, here, have all the minutes you can handle. And now they're like, well, maybe not all the minutes. This is a screwy one. I don't fully understand the fit, and this will be the first time in like 25 years that I'm not going to tell you to draft Brook Lopez. But as it stands right now, there's just no place for him to go. Let's go to Memphis for two pieces of news, and this is one that I think flew under the radar a little bit, and for myself as well, where we saw the Grizzlies. As I smashed my keyboard by accident, we saw the Grizzlies extend Jaren Jackson, gave him a massive, massive deal, but it was easy to overlook this little, almost like a miscellaneous tweet from Shams. It didn't have a picture on it. It didn't have the big breaking news graphic. But the tweet reads, quote, the Memphis Grizzlies and Cole Anthony's reps at Excel Sports are working towards a resolution that allows Memphis to create the necessary cap space to renegotiate and extend JJJ while giving Anthony the opportunity to find his next destination. We can unquote it there, although there is, he's got his little sources remark at the very end. So remember when the Desmond Bane trade went down, we got on this show and I was like, hey, pay attention to what Memphis does with Cole Anthony. It's possible that they might just say, hey, let's see what we've got here. And instead, it's gone hard the other direction. So the Grizzlies have effectively now cast Cole Anthony aside to go figure out whatever the hell he wants to do. If he lands on a bad team and he's looking to sort of establish long-term value, that's a situation where you could see Cole Anthony get to do a lot of stuff. But let's not even worry about that for a minute. That's the quick hitter part, is to say, hey, pay attention to Cole Anthony. Let's see what he does from today onward. This solidifies the bodies that are left in Memphis. Because Cole Anthony had, I guess, a pathway to maybe kind of screw with the players that were already there. And he was effectively an expiring contract. So I'm a little bit surprised they didn't try to move him, but they were just like, no, we don't need you. We're good. So now you've got John Morant, who's obviously the starting backcourt guy, but suddenly Ty Jerome, who they just signed, and Scottie Pippen have one fewer player to deal with, or one less. Doesn't matter. And then Desmond Bane being gone thinned it out even more. Luke Kennard, by the way, is also elsewhere. I think he signed with Atlanta, if I'm remembering right. So suddenly, a team that had a massive logjam only has a small logjam now. And the reason I bring it up is not to say, oh, you got to like race out, because they brought in KCP also, and he has a player option, not this coming season, but the following one. So he's going to be a much tougher player to move. Let's say KCP mostly takes the Desmond Bane stuff. Well, maybe that's not entirely accurate. He's not going to take the Desmond Bane touches. He might take the Desmond Bane minutes. That's a better way to put it. John Morant is constantly hurt and out, so let's just assume right out of the gates that he's going to miss 20 to 25% of this coming season, and that would be a good number for him lately. So Cole Anthony gone, John Morant starting point guard, KCP probably starting shooting guard, Santi Aldama possibly starting small forward, unless they want to go with someone like a Jalen Wells or I mean, if they sized up KCP, that could drop Ty Jerome into the starting lineup, but I don't think that's going to happen. And then certainly JJJ is up there at the big man spot. If JJJ is the starting power forward and Zach Edey is the starting center, then that pushes the sort of size discussion back down to that small forward shooting guard spot again. All that to say, we're probably not all the way to where we'd need with Memphis kind of thinning the herd. But the next thing I was going to talk about on today's show is this one, which is that Santi Aldama, who was a restricted free agent, just signed a $52 million 3-year deal to stay with the Grizzlies. I just got an alert that some sort of audio thing was going on, but I don't think that it matters. So hopefully that won't impact what you guys are hearing as I go back and pray that the podcast is actually working properly. So Aldama, who's coming off a year where he was like, well, for a while he was actually startable in fantasy, and we just kept saying there's no way that this is going to stick all year. And then it didn't. He got hurt for a little bit, and he cooled off, and all the things that we knew were going to happen kind of happened. And he finished at number 112 in 9 category leagues. But regardless, when you send Desmond Bane out, who was taking 15 shots a night on this team, and you bring in KCP, who very rarely wants to take shots, and Ty Jerome, who's going to be a little bit more willing to take shots, and for a while we thought Cole Anthony, who's also willing to take shots. Like, okay, well, you can sort of like cobble that together and replace Desmond Bane. With Anthony gone, do we think KCP and Ty Jerome are going to soak up all the Desmond Bane usage? I really don't. I think some of that is going to have to go to somewhere else. And my hope is that you're looking at, well, I'm hoping that Ty Jerome can be somewhat useful, but I'm actually hoping for Santi Aldama to be the guy who takes a small step forward. Because he got close this year, and we didn't believe in him, and that turned out to be somewhat accurate. But he was also at only 25 and a half minutes per game, 10 shots per game. He's a guy that needs popcorn stats to float percentages that are not particularly good. So keep an eye on Santi Aldama. I think that all of this news rolled together suggests that Aldama is going to get to do a little bit more. They're also, I think, hoping that John Morant can stay mostly healthy. But for those of us that were thinking, hey, maybe Scottie Pippen Jr. could be useful, I think Ty Jerome probably jumps ahead of him in the pecking order. So I don't know that I would go down that path either. So the hope here is that all of this news sort of funnels to Santi Aldama getting a slightly more consistent role. We do need to remember, I'm not sure that the Grizzlies are super huge fans of Aldama's attitude, but if that gets sorted out, then that's how this maybe gets a little bit better. I wanted to do 3 more, but I'm gone a little bit long on what I've talked about so far. Let's do a quick one right now. Free agent Bruce Brown is back with the Nuggets on a 1-year deal. What do I think of this? Well, luckily we sort of have the blueprint for what Bruce Brown has done in the past, and that was in the Denver Nuggets championship year. He was number 121 that season, played 28 minutes a game. I think the Nuggets are potentially a tiny bit deeper now than they were that season, but keep an eye on any potential injuries to the starting 5, because Bruce Brown will probably be kind of the Swiss Army knife guy who comes in and starts when basically anybody is out, perhaps with the exception of Nikola Jokic. We talked yesterday about Valanciunas being the backup there, but if Aaron Gordon goes down, or Jamal Murray goes down, or newly acquired Cam Johnson goes down, or Christian Brown goes down, I think my guess, and I don't know this for sure, but my guess is that if literally any of those guys get hurt, Bruce Brown is probably going to be the guy who starts. I don't know this for sure. It's possible that the Nuggets get creative and, don't use him as the backup 5 or something like that. Or, Tim Hardaway Jr., who they just brought in, or Peyton Watson, maybe one of those guys could slide in there. But it feels like they like the connectivity that Brown brings, while at the same time, he was also the backup point guard on the Nuggets championship team. And they may want to keep him on the bench for just that reason, because when Jamal Murray is out or Jokic is out or whatever, they want to make sure that there is that guy that can kind of move the basketball a little bit better. So keep an eye on Bruce Brown. His assists will probably be back in the threes this year, where they do take a little bit of a nosedive when he's not logging actual point guard style minutes for a team's offense. But it's going to take a lot to get him inside the top 100. I don't think that he has that in his arsenal, and there really isn't something you could punt with him, because he's just sort of like meh in almost every statistical category. But again, keep an eye on what happens with the Nuggets if somebody gets hurt. I certainly would not draft him prior to then. The troubled Kevin Porter Jr. is the next player we're going to talk about on today's show. He agreed to a 2-year, $11 million deal. He's back with the Milwaukee Bucks, who obviously we still have kind of a lot in flux for Milwaukee. We do know that they brought in Miles Turner on a big deal. We do know that they've waived and stretched Damian Lillard. They still have Kyle Kuzma on the roster. They brought back Bobby Portis on a couple years. They just traded for Vasilija Micic. They brought back Gary Trent. They brought in Gary Harris. They re-signed Taurean Prince. They brought in Jericho Sims. They traded Pat Connaughton. And the reason I'm reading off all these names, and the thing that should jump out to you guys, is Kevin Porter Jr. and Micic are kind of the only two guys on the roster that I would trust at the point guard spot, because they did let go of Ryan Rollins in the midst of all of this stuff. Who, remember, Adam King talked about Rollins on a show. I think it was as recently as last week. We're like, oh, this could be interesting, depending on that was on his program, not this one. That was the 4 possible breakout guys. That show dropped on June 22nd here on our YouTube channel. And now Rollins is not even there. So it's amazing how things change so quickly. But my guess is that that's kind of a job that's up for grabs. They'll be battling for it. Who do I think wins it? I think Kevin Porter Jr. is probably the better basketball player between those two guys. Micic more of a pass first, so maybe that's what gets him the gig. And you guys know, for many years and many reasons, some of them fantasy reasons, some of them other, I have not been much of a fan of Kevin Porter Jr., but, he stayed out of the news last year at the very least, and maybe we can try to figure out what's ahead for this young man. But in his time in Milwaukee, there were some pretty good ball games blended in there. Remember, he got traded mid-season. He was with the Clippers for a little bit. So if you look at the end of the year, and there were some games in there, remember, where Dame was out with the DVT, the blood clot, and there were some other games where Kevin Porter got to slide up and play a little bit more basketball. When he gets starters minutes, he can go pretty nuts in the counting stats. Points, boards, assists have always been a positive for him. He's a good rebounding guard. Not great, but a good rebounding guard. He gets assists. He can score. He'll jack it up from three-point land. He's not a good free throw shooter. 77% this last year was among the better numbers he put up in his career. He's not a good field goal percent guy. He was at 45 this last year. So you do need a lot of counting stuff. But just look at his games in April, or some of them at least, right at the end of the season. If you want to see a reason to say, well, maybe we can close our eyes and just try. He had a game of 13, 12, and 8. No, excuse me. It was 24, 12, and 8. I read that number wrong. 13 was his plus minus. He had a game of 28 and 4 with 2 steals in that ball game and 3 3-pointers. He had a game of 21, 4, and 5 with 5 steals, a 25 and 7 game also with 5 steals, and a 16-4-7 game with 2 steals. And yeah, the free throw shooting was not great during this stretch. And yes, he did have a sort of a brief heater from the field because he was largely playing against teams that were resting their starters or kind of were sort of half caring. But he can do some damage when he's given minutes to do it in. And a Dame-less Milwaukee Bucks team where the only other point guard option really is Vasilija Micic, it does kind of feel like Kevin Porter Jr. is going to have a shot to go try to do stuff like what the Rockets were hoping he could do before he turned out to be an even bigger problem child. His last year with the Rockets before being suspended / teams not just wanting to deal with it at all, he averaged 19, 5, and 6 with 1.4 steals. That was a big year for him. That was 2022. Where did he finish rank-wise that year? 84. That's despite the bad percentages. He was inside the top 90. If you were punting field goal, he jumped up. If you were punting turnovers, he jumped up. If you were punting free throws, he jumped up. That's not, look, he's not going to get 15 shots a game on this team unless Giannis is gone. But it's just a quick reminder on the counting stats damage he can do, and that'll fit on various punt build fantasy teams. So Kevin Porter Jr., much as we don't want to have to deal with it, he was a winner over the last day and a half. And finally, Sir Stopgap. DAngelo Russell has agreed on a 2-year, $13 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks. I think the second year, Shams had a follow-up tweet where the second year is it a player option or a team option? It's some kind of option. And this is very much hey, go be our point guard while Kyrie Irving's out. That's a player option, by the way. Man, how the mighty have fallen. D'Lo just not getting the money that he used to. But if you were wondering who the Mavericks point guard is going to be, now at least we know. So we don't have to worry about Brandon Williams. We don't have to worry about whether they were going to bring back Spencer Dinwiddie. It's going to be D'Lo. And I think you can pretty much just drop him into the starting 5, or I don't think he would have gone there until Kyrie Irving comes back, which most folks think will be maybe like around the All-Star break. So you could probably treat D'Lo a little bit like the Al Horford discussion last year. Now, admittedly, Porzingis came back faster than expected, but he's not a guy you're drafting for an entire season. If you took him in head-to-head, take him very late and just be ready to get rid of him at some point. Roto, you play the games when they're good. And there are going to be some good ones in there, by the way. He has rapport with Anthony Davis from their time with the Lakers, so that's an easy blending to get going. And he's not going to be bashful. He's never really bashful. The only way to silence D'Lo was to do either what the Lakers did, which was to basically just blame everything on him until he wanted to leave, or do what Brooklyn did, and that was play him like 23 minutes a game because they were not actually trying to win basketball games. But look, you're going to get AD. You're going to get either Gafford or Derek Lively as your starting 5 and 4. Flip it. I don't exactly know what the 2 and the 3 are going to look like for the Mavs. I would assume that Klay Thompson is one of them. I'm assuming PJ Washington is the other one, but I guess I don't know for sure. And then I do believe that D'Angelo Russell is going to start. Now, we'll get an answer on that during training camp, and you should be doing your draft after we get into the preseason so you can actually see what teams are doing with guys. But D'Lo is a guy I would certainly target in Roto late and hope to get, 30 good games out of him this year. Because a good D'Lo is a really good fantasy player. Even if he's passive with this team, you're still not talking about a ton of ultra high usage players on Dallas. Like you can say, oh, well, he's not going to be super high in the pecking order because he's just filling in for Kyrie Irving. But you got to look at what this team did last year over basically like the last month of the year when Kyrie was out. Anthony Davis took 17 shots a game. Najee Marshall and PJ Washington were each taking about a dozen, and Spencer Dinwiddie was taking 11, and Klay Thompson was taking 11. There's plenty of shots to go get them. Dinwiddie's not even there. Najee Marshall is probably not going to get a dozen shots in 33 minutes. Like, there's plenty of usage. Plenty. Because AD's the only guy on the roster, without Kyrie, I should add the asterisk, that is an actual high usage player. These other guys are not. Gafford's not. Lively's not. PJ Washington is sort of like medium, I guess. Klay Thompson was once upon a time, but he's not anymore. And someone's got to get him the ball because Klay is moving at about the same speed I do when I get out of bed in the morning. So I actually think D'Lo could be a really interesting stopgap play for your fantasy team. I would strongly consider him near the end of roto drafts for whatever you can get out of him. Head to head, obviously, it's harder to draft a player that you know is not going to last an entire season, but it still might be worth it. Like if you get to the 13th round and all your flyers are off the board and D'Lo's still there, just go, you know what, screw it. I'm going to take D'Lo. I'll hopefully have a good use out of him for October, November, December, and anything over that is gravy, and it'll help me get off to a good start. The problem with that method of drafting and head-to-head is that then your team build changes. Because, like, let's say D'Lo has a pretty good year. Let's say he averages like 14 and 6 or something like that with 1.5 to 2 3-pointers and a steal. And you're like, great, I have a team that's good at threes and assists and steals. And if you lose one of your guys who's actually better than league average in those categories, and you know it's happening, you either need to buttress it with even more early in the year or in your draft or whatever, or you need to have a contingency plan for February when Kyrie probably shows up and you're like, crap, now suddenly this guy I was relying upon to not float my assists and steals and threes, but to give them a nice boost. Like, it's hard to find a guy who's going to get you 5-6 assists late in a draft. And I think D'Lo is going to do that for half a year. Those guys just won't be there, at least not reliably. Someone might pop up like an Isaiah Collier or whatever, and like, you better be Johnny on the spot to get that dude. But just be aware of what it can do to team build. With Roto, who cares, man? Anything he puts into the coffers is there. Like, you keep those things. You keep those steals and assists the rest of the year, even if your team isn't as good at them on a night-to-night basis going forward. That is, I think, where I probably want to just pause the free agency chat. By the way, Spencer Dinwiddie signed with the Hornets while we're talking to be the LaMelo Ball backup. So keep an eye on that because he's almost definitely going to have to start some games out there. So that's the Spencer Dinwiddie solution. We actually found out. Good timing. Thanks, Shams, for hitting us with a Dinwiddie note while we're going through this thing. That's a guy who's definitely going to be trying to rehab his value, and he looked at that team and was like, oh, LaMelo's going to play 40 games. I'm going to be a starter here for half the year. So keep an eye on Dinwiddie. Hey, maybe that's your pair. You'd start with D'Lo for 40, and then you finish with Dinwiddie for 40. You got the guy who's going to play the first half of the year, and you got the guy who's probably going to play the second half. Crap. I do want to start to get into team analysis. If we can squeeze that in through the month of July, that's the goal here. This is what I've been trying to wait on for a little bit. So now that the dust is beginning to settle a little bit, we'll start to do some team analysis. I also want to get Adam and Eric on the show here over the next few days to talk about their big takeaways from free agency. We're going to get Noah Rubin on the show probably next week to talk about some of the dynasty ramifications of everything going on. And he can just re-educate us on if we should be doing anything with rookies this coming year at all. In the meantime, like, rate, subscribe on the way out. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. We'll see you again probably tomorrow.